Hello everyone, this is Schultzy, and I am back, and this is going to be a little different. This is kind of my little pet project, but my biggest thing is I'm going to be going on Way of the Samurai and Red Dead Redemption versus Cowboys and Samurai. And these games appear as polar opposite as they can be. One's about medieval Japan and the reactions and the effects one can have in a town and community there, and where Red Dead Redemption is the story of one man going through his past, trying to put things right so he can have make and have a life with his family. I mean, these ideas and ideals, polar opposite, two different spectrums. But if you really do look closer at this game, their true themes are a lot closer. And the starting points of these games, at first glance, make these games appear as I said before, as polar opposite as possible. Each is different as from where the cultures that produce these games. Though they appear very different, they're more similar than we give credit to. Even though Eastern and Western cultures differ in many ways, these games are showing turbulent times in each nation's and culture's history. For example, Red Dead Redemption. It's the closing days of the West, and the notions and ideas and belief of the wild, untamed West were coming to an end. Pretty much, it was the quashing. The American government was pretty much coming in, quashing independence, freedom, and in doing so, took away a lot of the lawless nature that was being there, but was being supplanted by new power, a new government. Wait, that sounds a hell of a lot like Way of the Samurai, the first one especially. Because honestly, if you think about it, the first Way of the Samurai, a lone samurai near the end of the Tokugawa period, and this is the closing days of the Tokugawa shogunate. You fight in a town trying to protect your rights and fight the encroaching Meiji government. But I digress on that. But it's like these two ideas, these 2 points, are really similar. And not only that, this is the end of the era of the samurai fighting, and the samurai were fighting against the encroachment of a modern day, and the freedoms and the rights and the privileges that were held by the samurai class and those who were there. This, at its core, is basically the same blessed thing. There just seems to be no difference on its basic tenets with this time period and how these people are interacting and reacting to is the encroachment of government, the encroachment of a modern time. That modern times are pushing away what made these cultures who they are. These games are more like each other than an average gamer will possibly notice. And honestly, we gotta give it. These games were created by 2 different cultures, but they're about the same thing: the modern encroachment, the destruction of past and previous traditions, and that they're supplanted by new ones, by the new modern age. And honestly, this is something that many people, I don't feel, when they do a quick look at, don't realize it. That these 2 games are the same. They're saying the same thing. They literally are making sure they're giving the same thing. They may have told it a different way. They may have given a different window dressing. But they are talking about and showing you the same thing and the same problems that both cultures went through. And Way of the Samurai and Red Dead Redemption are both on one's culture's let me try that one more time. Way of the Samurai and Red Dead Redemption are both on one culture's change to quote-unquote evolving into its new modern form. And honestly, in doing so, it's shedding its past self, and it is trying to embrace the new and the modern. These games are showing 2 different cultures acting and reacting to the coming of a modern age in pretty much the same way. I mean, if you just look at it, Red Dead Redemption, John Marston is trying to go through his life and try to put things right, trying to get rid of the past, expunge it from what he is, to embrace a modern era where the lawless nature is not needed, and that we can do things as we want. Way of the Samurai is just the samurai, the daimyo, protecting their rights and privileges that were granted to them by the shogunate government. And that the Meiji Restoration during that time period was pretty much supplanting and taking over and taking away the samurai's power and privilege. Even though each game is showing that that they themselves are trying to protect their culture, their way of life, be it with a gun or a sword. Each one is just defending their rights and their beliefs at that time. Both of these games, both of these games have honestly no fundamental difference. At their core, at their base core, they're about the fear of the new, the encroachment of the new, the destruction of the old, and the loss of what made these cultures who they are at its core, at their base core. Each of these cultures are honestly each of these games are showing each culture's just reacting in the same way to the problems that are going through and going on. And both these games are about fighting for one's freedom, their respective freedoms. Red Dead Redemption's John Marston, he's fighting for his freedom from his past, fighting for his life, liberty, and the ability to pursue his own happiness. Fighting to get under the control of the government and control their oppression, their oppressive ways. And the samurai, the character that you choose in the way of the samurai, is fighting from the encroachment of the modern era, the Meiji Restoration, and from the taking of control and power and privileges from the samurai class at that time. They're no different. These games are the same thing. Both these cultures are reacting in the same way to the same problems. The games are more alike than we give credit to, and we ourselves are more like each other than many of us will ever give credit to. These games focus on two different cultures during turbulent times of change. Even though both of our cultures do romanticize these times in each of our respective cultures, it is who we are. We honestly, as a whole, we will always be fighting for our freedoms, our privileges, our rights. And it's no different, be it in modern times or be it in games that are talking about past times. All these two games are mostly about just fighting for our privileges and our rights, and that they're being taken away by a new era, and not out of fear. It is just about supplanting and destroying what made our cultures who we are. And the fact that destroying what cultures make who we are is a very important point that we need not forget. That with new stuff coming out, you cannot forget who we are, because who we are is what makes an important part of us. You cannot just say the most important part of us is what we're doing now, this instant. It's also about where we came from. Where we came from is just as important. And these cultures are showing, these two games are showing how our cultures are trying to defend where we came from. At the time, it was just the instant of, we're fighting against the modern times. But we were trying to protect who we are, our fundamental rights, what we believe in, and what we are doing. Nothing in between. These are just, that's what it is. And when you think of America, you think of John Wayne and cowboys. We as a nation are defined to the world by a Wild West. And honestly, we took these ideas of being a man through most of the 20th century. When just the idea of what is a man? Be like John Wayne. It was something that we are shown to aspire to be. This, I have no doubt, is the same for Japan. I may not have expert knowledge in modern Japanese culture. I may be a history connoisseur, a history nut, a historian, an unemployed history teacher, but honestly, I can guarantee you that, without a doubt, Japan still romanticizes their past just like we romanticize our past of the West. Because honestly, these ideals of the samurai we're taking through the 20th century, which can easily be seen during World War II, where the Imperial fighter pilots, by the Imperial fighter pilots and many of their soldiers. How may you say you asked? Well, what happened is the Imperial fighter pilots brought their swords into their plane. This was their soul, their being. This is who they were. This is their family's honor and stuff. This is what made them who they are. This is one of the obvious notions of their the samurai culture still, and their code still being alive and well, and it was easily seen during this wartime. You had many other points: the loyalty to the imperial court, to the imperial government. That there was duty before dishonor, death before dishonor, kamikaze, divine wind, giving oneself up for your lord, doing of all what you could give of your lord. You were serving your lord to protect your lord, and in a sense protect the quote-unquote state. I mean, these things are just solidly in Japanese culture, and the same notions that we hold with American culture and Western culture is still strong in there. And honestly, easily that you can definitely say that this culture is alive and well. About in 1873, it was abolished to commit as a punishment, commit seppuku. And almost 100 years later, to the date, this act and belief of the samurai still existed during. I'm going to butcher his name, and I'm so sorry, Yukio Mishima, because he had tried to perform a coup, and he failed, and in doing so, he committed seppuku. This alone shows that the Japanese culture is still there, and honestly, it wasn't met with outrage. It was met with mourning. Mourning. This is something part of their culture. This is something that is taken with them from the samurai, from their past. This is what makes who they are. You cannot obliterate your past. No matter how much you try to, no matter how much government tries to just push out the past, it will still be there with you. Your culture and your past is what makes you who you are, and you cannot ignore this. There is no way you can ignore this, because ignoring it does more damage than you'll ever acknowledge. And these games, as a whole, are favorites in their respective culture and where they came from. Why? Because they celebrate each own's culture and their own beliefs and what they feel, what makes who they are important, be it the manly nature of being a man, a cowboy, holding yourself up, bringing yourself up by your bootstraps. And the samurai, duty, honor, devotion, many of the things that they bring into their workplace is still alive and well. These things are not. These things as a whole make their culture as strong as they are and important as they are. And honestly, no matter what positive, negative effects, these games are showing where we came from, and that honestly, we maybe appear as two different cultures. We are the same. We react to the same problems in almost the exact same way. That we look at these problems defending what we believe are our rights and privileges. And honestly, these cultures, maybe past cultures, we don't want to destroy our past cultures. These games let players have a chance to step back in time and experience their culture's past, and see how it was. Maybe some of them maybe through rose-tinted glasses to have a more positive, uplifting perspective. But nonetheless, it is showing our culture. These games do so much more. Allows us to live how the times were. Many of these games, people may say, oh, it's violent and graphic and gory. These times, no times in all of mankind has ever been peaceful. We ourselves are showing what our cultures are, and honestly, we are showing how we respond to outside influences taking away what our beliefs and loves are. Be it our power, be it our rights, be it our freedoms, be it our way of life. And these games let us see these cultures, past cultures, as they were. Many people don't think games as highly, but I do. And these things are a way for us to glimpse our past, and glimpse others' past, and really get down and see what made many of these cultures, many of our own cultures, why we romanticize about them. Because there's always greatness to where we came from and to our past. It may be coming through a bloody and violent time, but it's what makes who we are, and a beautiful thing, and our cultures are beautiful. I will continue on. I was going to continue on by saying that most of these games do push the notion of destruction and loss, and just lamenting the loss of what we were. Many of these games, when you really look at these two things, both of these games designers who made these games are showing a time that has been lost. And these games are really signifying a huge loss, a loss of culture, a loss of where we from. We gained new tech, new abilities, new knowledge, but there was a loss, and the loss is part of who we were. To embrace the new, we lost part of our soul, of what we became. Who we were, to become who we are now. And these games really show a lot of loss. And I'm not talking about the loss of lives and stuff like that in this one right here, but these games just have this sense of loss, that we are lamenting something that we destroyed that was once really beautiful and great for, at the time, pretty much selfish gains. And yes, time marches on. There's no doubt about that. But these games really do reinforce the notion of what we've lost, the beauty of our past, and many do wish to go back or at least relive this. And these games give us the ability to relive what we've destroyed and not feel a complete pang of loss and destruction of what we have done to become who we are now. And what I'll be doing now is talking about the endings of these two separate games, and honestly, truth be told, it will start off by the last scenes of Red Dead Redemption and the little scenes of the other ones, and here we go.
Well, them machines can turn men into angels. John, come here.
And honestly, we can see right here the calling of that the old is calling for the sight of what is coming, the future that is coming to destroy us. All the old sees what's coming.
Jack, go into the house, lock all the doors.
And even though the old knows their time is coming, the old still want to keep what was going to be the future safe, and because we cherish what was going to become.
Whatever happens, keep the doors locked and your mother inside.
Whatever happens, as he said, we always cherish what we love and what was going to be taking over from us, and the fact that we always want to embrace and push the notion of what we love. What we love should always be taking part of the past with us, and not obliterating it.
Well, old man, looks like things is about to get settled once and for all.
So it seems.
And this alone just sets the fact that we all know that the West has come to a close. The old relics have been destroyed, and this is the sense of loss that.
No, I ain't gonna let that happen.
And as he said, he doesn't want the old. Never wanted to let that happen because we love the old and the new. And honestly, this time period in West was really violent and brutal, mainly because it was a power struggle at its core. And we can see the first casualty, and this is the stuff that that many people don't realize, that the West wasn't done in overnight. Little bit, the really old was slowly taken apart. Old forms of thought, old forms of power struggles were slowly taken apart. It was not always that brutal, and only at the end did it become ultimately the most bloody. Because many of the old wanted to hold on. Each generation of the old wanted to hold on longer and longer. And many of them, the really old, understood their time was at an end, their point and process and how to live in this world, not physically, but their style, their way of acting in this world is not anymore needed. And honestly, we are seeing the early stages of many people at that time were lamenting at the loss, mainly, but many of the losses were too personal for us to see the true ramifications of what really happened. And those who have lived it, really know the true loss of what was done. We only can get a glimpse at it because we have not had the luxury of living through it. And honestly, this another scene showing just the destruction and the loss that of our history, of our culture, of what made it to be. Some were very vocal about it. Some just took it in stride, knowing that it was meant to be, and we had to embrace it in some ways. Though many do look back to see it was a great and beautiful time. But that's rose-tinted glasses.
Now listen, Jack, Narlin, get on this horse. Get out of here. Go find a place to hide.
You're coming with us, Paul.
I'll catch up.
Another sense of those who are there losing what they love, the past, the fact that many of us still wanted to bring the past into the future, trying to rectify both ideas together.
Ain't no trouble. I love you.
I love you.
Now go! Get!
And honestly, many of the past knew what was coming and wanted to make sure those that they loved, those that still cherish the past, were able to embrace the new in some form and way. As we can see, even though I may be looking way too much in this, but this is definitely what we need to look and think about, because this is truly what happens when we look back at the past. There are many that try to embrace it, and then there are some that try to embrace their end. Many, the West did, there are some that did embrace the ending relatively well by accepting the new, and then there are those like him, know it's coming, and still fight and rally against it, because that is their choice, their freedoms, their beliefs, what they hold true to be, and they feel not to let go of it, and they would rather go proudly into the sunset, as it were. and many of them do try to take, even at the end, many try to rebel against the government, but the government had its massive power, as you can see. Just this alone just showing that the West, the old, had no chance against the new for the power, the strength, and the unity that the new had over the old, because there was not that much old, and many of the old held on, like him, showing how strong the old West was, that it is part of our bones, part of our soul, that it is no different than anything else, and that we cannot destroy it completely. It will always be with us, maybe in a diminished fashion, but this is why the West was a very long time coming to modernize, because there were so many that held on to the old, and they knew that what had to be done, that they didn't feel they needed the government, and that is sometimes true. But the West is a great thing, and something that we can never forget at all. Even though there are those like him representing the strong government and stuff like that, and outer side powers in the future may think to destroy the old, but they don't realize that the old is so much part of them that what we are doing is no different than what the West did to survive. And honestly, even this next scene showing off that many of us, even now and then, look back to see what we lost and want to go back to what we lost and what we loved, because it is inherently a part of us. Be it the samurai or the cowboys, it is inherently in our, not DNA, but inherently in ourselves to look back and want the past. The past always seems a better rose-tinted glass of style, and there's many that will always lament the loss of what has happened, and we will always lament it, because it is a very brutal change. Not always change is gentle. Sometimes it is brutal, as this destroying of what we held once, and many of us now, why cowboy flicks hit a lot of people really strong. Why did this game solidify with us? It is at our core who we are. And the fact that we will always lament the loss, and that these video games give us a chance to embrace it and go into it and show our love for it by actually being able to experience it in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, this is at its core why video games, I feel, will always be superior.
On the lone prairie, where the coyotes wail and the wind blows free, and when I die, don't bury me 'neath the western sky on the lone prairie.
Many of us lament that loss, and I had to let this sign, because that is a very beautiful song that really shows that just how much we've seen and lost. In the future one, I will not even speak over the most of the samurai one, because just reading it is how the end of the samurai came. It was as brutal as the Western came to an end, as Red Dead Redemption shows. And I cannot put it more eloquently than these games, that these changes and destructions are part of us. We always will look back. We never will fully turn our back, but we will take what was part of our past and carry on forward. And I let you read The Way of the Samurai. That really holds off what was the code of the samurai and what made them who they were. Even though this is a fictional place, I'm sorry, I'm breaking in. Even though this is a fictional place, this is really what it showed, the destruction of what it was. And this game shows what it was, the true cost of holding on to their own beliefs, destruction and our extinction of our past, what we so much loved. And this is true. I'd like to say thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy this. Please tell me what you think, and I would like to say thank you and good night.